everyone. So I'm back with Asenia, and we're here to just kind of do a little chat and reflection all about the show and what we think are some really important aspects to discuss on it. So without further ado, Asenia, maybe you could reintroduce yourself just in case.
Hi, I'm Asenia. I'm the other Dart critic, so I've been writing the articles that you may or may not have been reading. And I was also the dramaturg and script supervisor for Scenes from an Execution.
She's done a lot of amazing work on this show, and it's been also wonderful to work with her as a Dart critic. So I'm super excited to finally have another chat with you because we haven't had one of these in a while. A little question just to start off with is, if you could tell audiences any one thing about this show after seeing it, what would it be?
I think, and I said this in my program note, I think it's important for audiences to derive their own meaning from it. This goes along with Howard Barker's theater of catastrophe, but it also goes along with art in general. And I think the message of the play is that Galactia's painting gets reinterpreted by the people and by the critics. And so I think with this piece, things get lost because of technical problems and because it's a new kind of theater. But that doesn't mean that the whole piece is lost. Part of it is also like, it doesn't matter what we meant because we're giving this piece to you and it's yours now.
Generally, confusion isn't a mistake on behalf of the cast or the crew. It's generally a choice, and to just think about that and give it some constructive thought is what I would ask of audiences.
We also wanted to talk about how tech and tech problems shaped the final product. And I wasn't in the room for it, I was watching. So how did it feel for you to be inside that?
Sometimes I didn't always know that tech problems were happening. Something that Gavin said was that they probably had a large technical issue every single performance, and I had no idea. The only tech issues I was aware of was opening night when Neo's mic wasn't working, and I think something else went a bit wrong that night too. But it being opening, I think everyone was kind of on that like opening show high, so I wasn't really paying attention to the technical issues. Saturday, Sunday went smoothly, and then the next weekend, I was extremely aware of the technical issues we were having Friday night, and then closing night was a big challenge for me. So I don't think I've directly specified how the setup was in the theater, but Neo and I were on the stage, and then we had a projection in front of us so we could see all the actors on the Zoom feed. And so during scene 2, I was staring at the projection, I was acting with Jesse, and all of a sudden Zoom logged me out. So I couldn't hear Jesse anymore. And I had no idea if I was still being streamed or if my mic was even working. I had no idea what was going on, but I kept acting and guessing where my line should have been. And then I was in the first 8 scenes, so nothing could have been fixed in that time unless David wanted to pause the show. And that was something he didn't want to do. So I just kept going. It kept logging me out and re-logging me back in. And then David, during scene 9, when I finally got a break, he was like, don't worry, you're being streamed through OBS. Things are coincidentally matching up, like just stay calm. So apparently I did cut out, and I'm not sure if I cut out for everyone because my parents also came that night and they said they couldn't see scenes that other people said they could. That's kind of how it was for tech. Like sometimes I didn't know what was happening and sometimes I was super conscious of it, but either way, I had to do what was on my plate. The final product was a mix of the actors putting everything into it and tech doing everything they can to fix the issues at hand. Some common questions that people have had about the show has been in regards to the toys and the punk rock music. Asenia, did you want to speak to either of those things?
I think I could talk about the punk rock music a little bit. Yeah, so the piece, a lot of the costumes are very sort of period clothes, like they're era appropriate and like very detailed costumes. And then we see Sketchbook in this like contemporary look. And so I think very much the show is interwoven between contemporary and 15th century. So I think that music sort of works because it has the energy that Galactia has. She brings this sort of attitude that I think matches up well with punk rock music, and it's a bit of a juxtaposition to the costumes, but I also think it really suits what's happening in the text, especially because a lot of the text was adapted by myself and Celine and David. to be a little more contemporary. And then even if you don't think it fits, like a lot of it is good music. So that's always nice.
I feel like the music was one of the things that really resonated with me personally in the show. And that might just be because in the summer when David kind of gave us a synopsis and a vision of the show, he described Galactia as punk rock. So when I heard the music for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, Galactia's punk rock. So when I heard people asking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, what kind of world have I been living in?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff like that in the show where it's like everyone has different thoughts about it, but it all comes together to be something.
And I know that some people come to theater a lot to just be entertained in a sense. I think it upsets some people, that they have to work to see a show and they have to work to understand a show, which is valid. Like some people just want to be entertained.
This is a show that is giving the audience a job.
Yeah, like that kind of theater exists, and I don't think that people necessarily know that.
Yeah, like I kind of like leaving a show and thinking about it a lot afterwards. So toys.
Yeah, so to lay it out, the final painting that is shown, it's meant to look like it was drawn or painted like a child. And it's meant to insinuate that even a child could understand the effects of war, and even a child could understand that this battle was not a victory and it was a slaughter, and it shouldn't be celebrated. So the implementation of the toys is meant to signify the child's painting. I've been in a lot of communication with the associate director about this because she explained this to me as her interpretation, and I'm sure there could be a lot more interpretations regarding this, but that was one that stuck with me.
And it's like, those dolls that artists use as references. Like she's sort of drawing on these things as references and as things to copy. And in the original vision, instead of toys, it was miniatures of all of the characters. And so it was a way for Galactia to control her story. And it ended up transforming into something a little more abstract, where she's manipulating toys in order to create and in order to connect with the childishness of the artist.
Now that you say that, I'm thinking about the interpretation of the childish behavior of people like the Doge and Ostensible, and that's something I'd never considered before. Even a week and a half after the show, still making discoveries. Also, to speak to the toys once more, we've said this a lot, but something that David was nervous about, and that I think the whole crew was nervous about, is how do we keep an audience's attention span while they're watching a show online. I think he wanted to implement a lot of things that kept the audience on their toes. And so it's like, why did you use the toys? Now you have to think about that as well as watching the show. As an actor, those were things that David found helped me build my energy in certain scenes. So it started with me in my bedroom playing with my cart of toiletries and like flinging things around, like my shampoo or whatever. And then he decided that those were going to be the toys that were on the table and I was going to keep that energy. I'll admit I had a difficult time finding an intention for those scenes. I was like, it builds my energy and that's awesome and I can do that. But I wasn't always certain of how the toys relate to the other characters in the scene or to the scene as a whole. So we did a lot of digging with those toys.
It makes sense that that exploration had to happen so that it wasn't just something to do, it had to mean something to you.
What were your feelings in the week leading up to opening night? Because it was hugely different than how it would typically be going into an in-person live production.
Yeah, I also think it was really different for me just with what my role was in this show, because by leading up to opening night, I was basically done my job. Like, I'd written my program note, I'd given the cast all of the information that I could, and I just had to sort of let you guys all go and do it, and I had to sort of become an audience member. So that's probably a normal part of that journey, but because I didn't get to like see anyone after the show, it felt weird and it was very like disconnecting. What ended up happening was after opening night, we decided to add a synopsis of the show to the program. And so it turned out my job was not done. Like, I think I learned a lot and I still got to have an experience that was comparable to a regular dramaturgy experience, which I think is nice in terms of learning. What was it like for you leading up to opening night?
Very similar to you in the sense that it kind of felt out of your control at one point. David said that this was now a tech show and it wasn't essentially up to us anymore. Like, it's not one of those things now where you can go out onto the stage as an actor and what you do determines how the show goes. It was now how tech goes kind of determines how the show goes. Also, I'm not sure if you knew this, Asenia. I just found out this like 2 days ago, but Peter, our stage manager, could never hear what we were saying, and he had to call all the cues, and he called all our cues just by reading our lips, which is phenomenal.
Absolute powerhouse.
He really is.
So many people who worked on this show really blew me away with how much they put into it.
Final question to just close things off is, Asenia, you've never worked dramaturgy before, so throughout your process, what have your overall feelings been like?
We started the process and it felt very much the way it would probably work normally, because during the summer I don't know how many meetings in person they have anyway, so we had like online meetings talking about the show. I was reading like dissertations about theater catastrophe and about Howard Barker and about scenes from execution, and I was like doing research about painters, Italian painters that influenced this show. And so like, and then I read Howard Barker's book, and so it was very like normal dramaturgy stuff that's like a lot of research, but I also was really into it, and I got kind of like obsessed with finding out everything I could so that I would have all the information for you guys. And then rehearsals started, and that's when it felt weird, because I'm there and I'm taking notes and I'm doing research, but there's this serious disconnect. I would be sitting there for like 6 and 8 hour rehearsals, taking notes and doing my work with my camera off. And so it's like people didn't necessarily know I was there. I was in the space and not in the space. And I think that that can happen in person as a dramaturg. Like, you can check out and fade into the background, but it was much easier to do that here. But I really liked it, and I think I learned a lot from it. And it was super demanding and super challenging. Something about the online thing that's really helpful is that David would reference something and then I would go look it up. So he was talking about Diego's character, and he was like, here are some influences for how to portray ostensibly. So I have 2 laptops, and on my other laptop I was watching videos of the stuff that David referenced, and then I would just send them to the chat on Zoom. The online medium was cool because it made sharing resources a lot easier, but I also think it sort of isolated me from the rest of the cast. Working with Molly was amazing though. Like, she was always so receptive to everything.
You held your ground quite nicely too.
Thanks.
Like, from an actorly perspective, I think a lot of people in the cast really respected you and respected your opinion, and every time you spoke, everyone was coherently listening.
That's nice. It's hard for me to tell because of Zoom.
You're so eloquent in the way that you speak, so I think that people held what you said to a pretty high degree.
I am Googling half of what I'm talking about. Like, part of dramaturgy is research. It's not already knowing stuff. And so it's, yeah, I feel like if we'd been in person, I could have made more of a friendly impression and less of just a like, I'm an encyclopedia.
I think you were friendly, and that might just be because I'm your friend.
Stay posted on Dark Critics for stuff that's not behind the scenes for an execution, because we'll be reviewing other shows and talking about other stuff going forward, which I'm really excited about.
Me too. Based on what we've done from Scenes from an Execution, I'm excited to see what we can move forward with. Thank you to everyone who stayed tuned from the beginning, and thank you to everyone who's joined along the ride. It's been really fun.
Yeah, stay tuned for updates on darkcritics.com because we've got a lot more fun stuff coming your way.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you soon.